Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to What Is to Come. This is a video response to an email that I got. And here's the email. Comment. When I see this headline, I know it is a time to calculate the word occupy. I see that it is H6148, and the verses are very interesting, as Matthew would say. I don't understand how to find the numerical value. The headline in question is from CNN.com, and it is Occupy Wall Street is going nowhere without leadership. And indeed, this word is very important. It calculates to 272 using Hebraic alphanumerics. And in the biblical mechanics of this, it gets very interesting. The 272nd verse of the Bible is Genesis 11, verse 5. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the sons of men had built. Very interesting indeed. And when we get into the chapters for this, the 272nd chapter of the Bible is 1 Samuel chapter 5, and you will take note that that is when the Philistines captured the ark and took it back to their country. And Dagon, of course, plays into this, but the whole scenario surrounding the entire incident. And when you get into the other chapters for this, what's very interesting is one of the wraps is Jeremiah 47. And that is very interesting indeed, because that too is a prophecy against the country of Palestine. And another wrap is Psalm 54. And this is a psalm of David when the Zephites came and said to Saul, "Is not David hiding himself among us?" And in relation to these protests that are going on, I'm going to read this. It's a very, very short psalm. It's only 7 verses. Save me, O God, by your name, and vindicate me by your power. Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth, for strangers have risen against me, and violent men have sought my life. They have not set God before them. Selah. Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is the sustainer of my soul. He will recompense the evil to my foes, destroy them in all their faithfulness. Willingly I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, O Lord, for it is good. For he has delivered me from all trouble, and my eye has looked with satisfaction upon my enemies. You'll take note that this should be the proper course and action. They should not be rising up. Not very wise to do so indeed. The other chapter wraps is, this will take you to Matthew, the 12th chapter, and that chapter there details some Sabbath questions, and he defines there that he is Lord of the Sabbath. There in verses 18 through 21, he quotes quite a lot from other scripture, and the unpardonable sin is mentioned here. He rebukes the Pharisees again, and it does get interesting in verse 33. Words reveal character and the desire for signs, but you need to understand there's so many other scriptures quoted in this particular chapter that we could certainly spend a whole entire broadcast just detailing this. The extended wraps go into John chapter 12. This is where Mary anoints Jesus, of course, before he enters into Jerusalem. And 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the fact of Christ's resurrection and the order of the resurrection. Very important indeed, because the last portion of that chapter gets into the mystery of the resurrection. And then the last one we're going to talk about is Hebrews, the 12th chapter. Jesus is the example and a father's discipline and contrast the Sinai and Zion and the unshakable kingdom, which is what these people here at the protest are longing to do. Now, when we get into the different letters that calculate, when summed together, 272, we run into some very, very interesting words. The first one is H1197. It means to burn or to consume, to kindle. It is used 94 times in the scripture. And H1298, which is very interesting because that is found only one time in the scripture. It is the king of Sodom. Very interesting indeed. The next one is H5677. It is a proper masculine noun. It's a Benjamite on several occasions. It's a priest in the days of Jehoiakim. It is the son of Selah. And those references are pretty interesting when you get into those stories. And the next one is H6153. It means evening, night, or sunset. It is used 137 times in the scripture. And next is H6154, which is a rather peculiar word. It's mentioned in the King James Version as woof, as a W-O-O-F. It means mixed, as in interwoven. And it's used 11 times in the scripture. And it can mean, and does mean in Exodus, the 12th chapter, verse 38, it's called their mixed multitude. So isn't that very interesting pertaining to the Occupy Wall Street? Next is H6157. This is interesting as well. This is a swarm, and particularly diverse sorts of flies. It's used 9 times in the scripture. And I really suggest people look over these. It is used a lot there in Exodus, the 8th chapter. And it, of course, winds up in Asaph. So, and the quite particular verse that's used there is interesting indeed. It's also used in Psalm 105, verse 31. Going further, we have H6158. And this is raven used in the scripture. It's used 10 times. And that immediately makes you think about Elijah and the ravens feeding him, which is pretty interesting when you understand that, other words that calculate to 272 is H7456, which is to be hungry. It is used 11 times in the scripture as well as hunger, hungry, suffer famished, or famished. Now, H7457 means just hungry, and it is used 22 times in the Bible. So you see the 11 and the 22 as pertaining to hunger gets to be very interesting. And H7458, that as well calculates to 272, which means famine or hunger. So put this together with the raven aspect, and that's very interesting indeed. Now, H7251 also calculates to 272. It is to square or be squared. It's used 12 times in the scripture. 8 times it's used as 4 square, and 4 times it's used as just square. Which those verses get very interesting indeed, because it takes you to the most curious places. Now, the last Hebrew word I want to talk about, H7253, means along the same lines as the last one. It means fourth part or 4 sides. It's used 7 times total in the scripture. And most particularly when you get into, the articles for the tabernacle. Now there is one Greek word that I want to cover. It calculates to 272. It is used only a single time in the scripture, and it's used for lack. And where it comes up is most pertinent to the protest. Acts, the 4th chapter, the 34th verse, neither was there any among them that lacked. For as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them and brought the prices of the things that were sold. Very interesting indeed. So I hope that this has shed light on the number 272, and it relates to these things that are going on right now with the protest and Occupy Wall Street. Very interesting indeed, and I want to thank you for the email that you sent me. It was from JL. I'm not going to say their name, but thank you very much, and I hope to do these a lot more because it's easier for me to do this than to write something up and then have someone else type it up. So I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, by all means, God bless.